And it was, I believe, the cortege is starting to make their way down. So I will leave you now, Kirsty. Thank you so much for explaining that for us. We will just try to get our position back so that we can talk over the shots as they are coming. The family, as we said, they have been the ones that have been responsible for funding today. They're making sure that this could go ahead smoothly. It's been an important moment for them to come back and for Ozzy to be able to... They're not describing this as a sort of funeral procession. They want this to be one final tour for Ozzy of the city, is how they're putting it.
Much for that. We can now see the cortege approaching down the street in the centre of Birmingham. And you can hear the strains of Boston brass. These are the musicians that are accompanying the hearse as it makes its very, very slow procession down through the centre of the city. The family are there. We can see a number of vehicles in there. Let's just pause and listen to this as it comes closer to us. Well, you hear the crowds cheering and clapping as the hearse came by. The hearse itself, purple flowers on the top, the word Ozzy picked out and flowers on the side, and a single white hand-tied bunch of flowers at the back of the coffin. I'm joined in the studio by Paul Stokes, music journalist, and as we were listening to that cortege as it went past, Paul, Boston Brass, you reliably informed me they were playing Iron Man.
Yes, I think so, yeah. The Black Sabbath iconic song obviously had a second life in the film as well. So, I mean, just showing the reach, I think, of Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne.
I mean, this is a funeral. It's a desperately sad time to mark the passing of somebody, but it was clear that he was going to do this in a rock and roll fashion, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, being known as the Prince of Darkness, he was asked many times about what he wanted to happen when he went, and he was very adamant that when his funeral happened, it would be a celebration.
We're just going to pause because just to listen to the cheers. Paul, sorry, we cut you off in your prime there, just as the crowd was chanting Ozzy, 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 and you were saying you were Prince of Darkness. You've been asked many times about how he'd like to be remembered.
And he wanted a celebration, which it sounds like exactly what he's getting. He said, you know, many people have had bad times in their life. I don't want this, when I go, to be this sort of downbeat thing. I don't mind about the music, but just make sure people are you know, having a good time. He was talking about having pranks, so who knows what we might find later on in the day. But yeah, no, and I think, you know, as the report from the Birmingham Mail was saying, you can just hear the local pride. I mean, one thing I know, all the people I know, no matter what genre, who are from that region, who make music, Ozzy Osbourne is such an important figure for Birmingham and that area, because he, A, showed it was possible, but B, there are very few musicians who get to invent their own genres, and with Black Sabbath, that's exactly what he did and paved the way for heavy metal.
Well, exactly. You know, it is where the phrase heavy metal came from. Here from this point down to the Black Sabbath Bridge, and that's where a lot of people have gathered here today. We think it might pause there, the cortege.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just shows the many lives of Ozzy Osbourne, you know, rock icon, reality TV star, you know, the whole thing with Ozfest, which, you know, made him a huge player in terms of global live music, promoting young metal bands coming through, young rock bands. He's had that thing. And then also, the unique thing I think about Ozzy Osbourne is he is a true rock icon. He is Prince of Darkness, but he also gave across this really approachable, down-to-earth sort of personality. And it was amazing that you could be, you know, as we saw right at the end at Aston Villa, you know, be an icon, but also be this really approachable sort of guy. And I think that you can see people have responded to that today.
Let's listen to the band again as they come past. We were expecting that this might happen. The family, we think, are getting out here at the Black Sabbath Bridge to take a look at some of the flowers and the tributes that have been left to Ozzy Osbourne. Also, perhaps to engage with some of the crowd members who've come down here. I mean, the level of devotion from these fans, you can just hear it, can't you? And there, Sharon Osbourne, his wife, was his tour manager. Helped by her daughter, Kelly. And son, Jack, also, and other daughter, Amy. The family taking some time to look at some of the tributes that are on the flowers, and also to be greeted and comforted by the Mayor of Birmingham there also. clearly emotional. Sharon Osbourne there. Funeral difficult at the best of times, but this, compounded with the adulation from the crowds, must make it incredibly emotional. As the family get back into the procession of 6 vehicles following the hearse, let's bring back in Paul Stokes, music journalist, who's here with me. And Paul, I mean, gosh, really emotional watching those scenes, weren't they? They looked absolutely floored by the wave of love that came off the crowd.
Absolutely. I mean, we've sort of known Sharon Osbourne as this sort of smooth operator, this real sort of beast of the music industry. And so to see her sort of wounded like that is, yeah, very moving. But I mean, it was interesting because the crowd, it sort of feels like a cross between an away day, a royal walkabout and a solemn procession, which is kind of everything that Ozzy Osbourne sort of represents. It's brilliant.
Well, we're talking about the children that came out of the hearse, and they are, all of them, you know, we know them all because of that reality TV show, which is another element to his extraordinary legacy. It sort of created the genre of reality TV, didn't it?
Absolutely. The Osbournes are 25 years old this year, and you think...
Gosh, I can't believe it's that long ago.
I know, and it was like everyone in the world was watching it. I remember when we were sort of covering the programme, it was always like, can you get Jack on? Can you get Sharon? Can you get Ozzy? When people sort of announced it was going to happen, it was like, who cares? It's like, but the guy used to be Black Sabbath, and it just absolutely not only transformed reality TV, but the reinvigoration around Ozzy as this global icon. It was absolutely amazing, all by just being himself and swearing a lot and being annoyed at dogs a lot of the time, it seemed. I mean, it was so true to him.
It also means for those of us who maybe don't know much about Black Sabbath or aren't Black Sabbath fans, we feel a connection with the family because we've sort of watched those kids growing up, haven't we?
Absolutely, and it was held by him being himself.
Yes,
There was no like, I've got to pretend to be this amazing rock star, 24/7. He really let his true personality come across in that programme. I think that that's why it worked. And then just seeing his children's reaction to having this sort of iconic yet slightly embarrassing dad on camera, it was a really, really warm programme. It really kind of obviously it made them huge stars, and there were sort of consequences because of that. But there was a real warmth to the Osbournes, and it wasn't sort of reality TV in its sort of more exploitative mode. It was a real sort of window on this sort of unique personality in his family.
We're talking about his personality. You interviewed him about 5 years ago. What was he like?
Oh, he was amazing. Everything you want him to be. I mean, like I say, he was an icon, but he was also incredibly down to earth. It was for Q magazine, and they used to have this back page where you don't have to ask silly questions. And one of them was like, when was the last time you did something? So I had to ask Ozzy, when was the last time you bit the head off a bat? Because obviously it's the famous or popular story. And the phone line went dead. And I was like, oh my God, I've offended. I didn't know it was possible. I've offended Ozzy Osbourne. What am I going to do? And I was thinking, well, I could end the piece there. Anyway, the phone goes about 5 minutes later. Ozzy, sorry, I was pressing this button to shut the window and it pressed it and it cut you off. What were you saying? And I said, oh, and I asked the question again. He went, that's a really stupid question. Next. He was lovely. It was absolutely brilliant.
And we've talked about the fact that he was this icon of Birmingham. It looked to me actually like one of the members of Duran Duran looked like they were in that shot there. It may have just been a family member with rather large hair, but Duran Duran are from Birmingham also, aren't they? So it's entirely possible. And they certainly wrote on Instagram a tribute to him after he died, saying, Ozzy was a cat who had way more than 9 lives. Thanks for the ride, Ozzy. Love from the other Brummies. He brought so much joy, humour and raw power to the world in the life of many chapters, and that first chapter was the music, of course, and we slightly overlook at the band there. They are playing his music, they're playing Black Sabbath music, but what kind of musician was he? How did he change music?
Well, I mean, he started off more on the sort of rhythm and blues side at the end of the 60s, and he was in various bands at a time when, you could have you could be in one band and it could break up in the next band, and slowly but surely the sort of nucleus of Black Sabbath came together, and it was only with those sort of 4 personalities and just sort of tapping into a slightly darker thing. I think one of them was reading a book on the occult and had a really bad dream, which led to the song Black Sabbath, which obviously then gave the band the name and this kind of, the album and everything like that. And I think, what they just found they tapped into was by taking that bluesier sound and making it more dirgy, more darker, louder. I mean, that's the key. I mean, I think when people think of heavy metal, they think of this sort of huge amount of noise, but actually at the core of heavy metal, there is this amazing sort of melodies and tunes, and almost sometimes going back to folk music, sometimes the way that their songs are picked out. And a lot of that comes back just to Ozzy Osbourne because of, his love of melody. He's a massive Beatles fan. And that really sort of translated into then the kind of, although it was darker, although it was heavier, there are beautiful melodies in the middle of Black Sabbath. And I think, Ozzy is a huge part of that, along with obviously Tony Iommi and his unique guitar playing style and the rest of the band.
Yeah, I heard Rick Wakeman on the radio this morning, and he was talking about that and how it was mainly chords before Ozzy Osbourne came along and Black Sabbath came along, and that it did really sort of pivot the whole genre. Absolutely, and it made a new genre, because it was sort of rock music was going one way and had very sort of tradition coming out of blues, and heavy metal, and particularly where it expanded in the 70s and 80s, it's this complete divergent path from where rock was up to that point, and is effectively a genre in its own right, and a massively, it's a brilliant genre, and it's massively huge, but it's kind of genre that, apart from like the Kerrangs of this world, none of music critics like me don't tend to be like, they can be quite dismissive, and you look at some of the reviews they got at the time, and so people come to heavy metal. It is a community. No one tells you to like it. The people that love it absolutely adore it, and I think that's a big part of the outpouring today. That sort of community, they treasure their heroes, no matter how young or old they are. I was really always moved when I covered at Kerrang, and Ozzy would be as important to them as it would me to say when I was working in more trendier magazines, and we'd be all about the person of the day. Ozzy was always an icon in that community of music. Yeah, so cool that he didn't have to be on any bandwagon. He was just himself, wasn't he? Absolutely. Let's return to Katie, who was down there amongst the crowds. Katie Spencer, our arts and entertainment correspondent. Katie, we're just looking at these images of the huge mass of flowers that have been left there. And as we looked at those pictures of the hearse just there, Katie, flowers on the front of the hearse as well that have been thrown by people in the crowd throughout the course of this procession. What does it feel like to be down there on the ground?
What an emotional moment. We journalists are used to sort of being quite hardened in these scenarios, and I just have to say a lot of us were in absolute tears just watching that. I'm joined now again by Kirsty Bosley from the Birmingham Mail. That was so emotional, wasn't it, Kirsty?
Dreadful, honestly. It was so sad. Sharon is normally such a, and she's known as being like this hardest woman in metal, and it was just so sad to see her looking so frail.
And I think the family lasted here as long as they could, really. It's only a week since the news of his death broke, so it must be hugely sort of emotional to try and come to terms with this.
Definitely, seeing their grandchildren putting down flowers is just really heartbreaking. I think it's just really sad, and I think it takes great strength to show up for the people of Birmingham and let them say goodbye.
And I mean, what a goodbye from the people of Birmingham as well. There's all sorts of people in the crowds have been crying, and flowers were thrown onto the cars as well, weren't they? This has been important for this city to say goodbye properly, hasn't it?
Yeah, totally. And it's closure, really. We've had such a wonderful month of, we call it the summer of Sabbath, but we didn't even make it all the way through the summer before he died. So it's tragic, but I think his spirit lives on. You can just tell by the way that people are all joining together and strengthening one another that that's something that can't die. And Ozzy said that. He said it at Villa Park. He said Birmingham forever, and you know that's how we feel. Birmingham forever.
It's been talking to you in such an emotional time as well, but thank you for taking the time. Yeah, look, it's been a real sort of mix of emotions, really. It's been, at times, as the cars were passing by here, just really, really quiet, but interspersed with people wanting to chant Ozzy's name and make sure that the family can hear that they're here supporting them, as well as being able to say goodbye to Ozzy. I think, as I said just then, the family lasted as long as they could, but clearly it's hugely emotional for them. Hugely emotional for the people that are just out on the street today. He is an artist that has meant so much to so many people. We saw this a few years ago with David Bowie as well. I think he's an artist that just, he's bigger than the music he made. He meant so much to people around the world, and I think that's what we're seeing today. People have wanted to just find a way to express the emotions that they've been feeling, which is a really rare thing for a celebrity to be that big but have such a sort of emotional and personal connection. A real moment to be here, really.
Absolutely, Katie. And when we think back to all of the tributes that were made to him when he passed away last week, you know, Ronnie Wood, Elton John, Rod Stewart, as well as Birmingham bands like Duran Duran and UB40, he didn't just have a place in the hearts of the fans, you know, the die-hard Black Sabbath fans, but real industry-wide respect.
Absolutely, yes. So respected for the music that he actually made. I mean, they invented a genre, Black Sabbath did. They paved the way for many of the modern rock bands that we see today. Their influence is across so much of the modern music that we have today. I was actually talking to, about an hour ago, talking to one of the original roadies for Black Sabbath, who was with them in the 70s and was with them a few weeks ago when they took to the stage. And we were speaking about the fact that the Herculean effort that it took Ozzy Osbourne to get back on the stage, to get fit enough to give fans that final performance. But actually, if you were in the audience, and I was there, lucky enough to have a ticket to that, it was just such a moment. His voice sounded absolutely phenomenal and lasted throughout most of that gig. The effort that it took, I think you could see in his face, it was hugely emotional for him, seeing the reaction from fans. But for fans as well, I think, who got to see that last performance, it was just such a special occasion. And I think, in a way, sort of people had sort of rest on their laurels a bit, thinking that Ozzy seemed fit and well enough to do that, but it obviously must have taken such a lot of energy out of him to give that last performance. But look, a man who will be remembered not just for his music, but for his kindness and for the way in which people have interacted with him over the years. Even if they don't know him, I think people feel like they do know him because of his working class roots and because of the way that he didn't seem to kind of lose sight of who he was. And I think that's why, particularly for the people of Birmingham, he is such a special person, a special artist, and the like of which just we won't see again, particularly for the people of Birmingham. I think he has mattered so much to them over the years.
He certainly has, and that's really, really clear from the really warm scenes that we're seeing from down there. Katie Spencer for us in the heart of Birmingham, very close to the Black Sabbath bench, where we've just seen Ozzy Osbourne's cortege pass through and family members get out and read some of these tributes and lay their own flowers down there before they pass on to what will be a private funeral later on this afternoon. We've still got Paul here in the studio with us, Paul Stokes, music journalist, and Katie talking about the fact that he never He never lost his roots, he never forgot who he was, but also he was a man who, my word, he lived the life of a rock star, didn't he? You know, in terms of the life and soul of the party, this was a man who loved to party. He'd sort of won life's lottery, I heard him once say. He won this lottery ticket and he was going to spend it, and he just did, didn't he?
No, absolutely.
It's a miracle he made it to 76.
Well, it's okay. He kind of invented the archetype in a lot of ways in terms of that sort of, you know, hell-raising rock star. I mean, I know, obviously, he had his issues with substances, and he was out of Black Sabbath for a bit because of that, and had to have reunions and out again and that kind of thing. But at the same time, he definitely seems to be someone who, although he was aware of the limits and when he'd crossed them, he was someone who sort of definitely enjoyed a large part of his life and a large part of what it is to be a rock star. You know, there was no sort of po-faced, oh, you know, I'm working on the record. He was like a very sort of, you know, I am a rock and roll, the Prince of Darkness, an icon, and I'm going to make the most of this at every opportunity. And I think he did even right to the final, you know, the final gig to be able to, you know, choreograph that where you've gone back, you're playing a massive football stadium in your hometown, and it is your last gig, and go out. I'm sure he would have loved to be able to, the fact that he could theatrically stage all that and have that sort of that final coda on his career is really, I think, speaks to how much he really embraced the sort of the performance side of rock and roll.
Paul Stokes, music journalist, great to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us today, talking about the life, celebrating the life of Ozzy Osbourne, a heartbreaking day for his family, but enormously emotional for them to see the absolute love that was held in so many people's hearts for Ozzy, and they've all come down to Birmingham today, travelled from far and wide to pay their respects and to share their love with the family who have just travelled through the centre of Birmingham.
Don't worry, Kelly, I'm right behind I'm not. I'm with Sky. Kelly holding.
You couldn't do it like that, whereas on white.
They would not. As it starts,
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you move?
So where Sharon's toilet? Is it there? I'll come back in a couple of hours.
Sure. Okay, I'll meet you back to the load spot. All right, see you in a sec.
You go for it, mate.